It was the late hours of November 28th, 1981. The waves rocked the yacht Splendour, anchored off Catalina Island under the dark California sky. On board Hollywood royalty, Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. By morning, Natalie was dead, her body found floating a mile from the yacht, still wearing her red down jacket and flannel nightgown. The official story? A tragic accident. Authorities ruled she had fallen overboard while trying to secure a dinghy. But the questions began immediately. How does a woman terrified of deep water end up alone in the Pacific? Why were there bruises on her body? And why did the only witnesses, her husband, Robert Wagner, and their guest, Christopher Walken, give conflicting stories about that night? For over 40 years, whispers of something far more sinister have refused to fade. What really happened to Natalie Wood that night? A Hollywood icon lost, a mystery that won't drown, a truth still adrift. This is Derrick Investigates, and I'm Derrick. Tonight we uncover the chilling case of Natalie Wood, a beloved actress whose life ended in the dark waters off Catalina Island. A star vanishes without a trace, a body found drifting at sea, a story filled with contradictions. Was it a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? For over 4 decades, questions have lingered, theories have emerged, and the truth? It remains just out of reach. Join me as we unravel the inconsistencies, examine the evidence, and piece together the final hours of Natalie Wood's life. If you're drawn to the mysteries that refuse to fade, like this video and subscribe. Your support helps bring these stories to light. To understand how it all began, we must go back to that fateful weekend aboard the Splendour. Natalie Wood was more than just a Hollywood actress. She was a legend, a face recognized by millions, a talent that had captivated audiences since childhood. From her early breakout role in Miracle on 34th Street to her unforgettable performances in West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, Natalie wasn't just a star, she was a household name. But beyond the glamour and red carpets, Natalie was also a wife, a mother, and a woman with deep insecurities about something few people knew: her lifelong fear of dark water. Friends and family recall how she would avoid deep waters, often speaking of an eerie premonition that she would one day drown. Despite this fear, on Thanksgiving weekend in 1981, Natalie set sail on a yacht named Splendour, anchored off the coast of Catalina Island, California. She was accompanied by her husband, Robert Wagner, their guest actor Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davin. Catalina Island, a picturesque escape off the coast of Los Angeles, was known for its scenic beauty, secluded coves, and as a getaway for Hollywood's elite. That weekend, however, the island would become the backdrop for a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. It was a weekend meant for relaxation, but the events that unfolded would leave more questions than answers. By the early hours of November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood, one of Hollywood's brightest stars, would be found lifeless, drifting in the dark waters a mile away from the yacht. What really happened that night? And why do so many details remain unclear? The evening of November 28, 1981, started as a seemingly normal night aboard the Splendour. The group had dinner at a local restaurant on the island, where witnesses later recalled them drinking and laughing. But behind closed doors, tensions were reportedly simmering. Back on the yacht, things took a turn. At some point during the night, an argument broke out. Witnesses later reported hearing voices, raised, intense, echoing across the water. Then, sometime between midnight and the early hours of November 29th, Natalie Wood was gone. When the disappearance was first noticed, there was no immediate panic. But as the minutes stretched into hours, concern turned into fear. The search began, but by then it was already too late. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the Coast Guard received a distress call. And then, the discovery. A red down jacket floating on the surface, weighed down by the body inside. Natalie was found just a mile away from the yacht. The official report ruled it an accidental drowning, suggesting she may have fallen while trying to secure a dinghy. But from the start, something felt off. The details didn't align. The accounts of that night were inconsistent, shifting over time. Even after decades of re-examinations, one unsettling truth remains. Natalie Wood's final moments are still shrouded in mystery. As someone who has examined countless cases, I've seen how the smallest inconsistencies can change everything. Sometimes the real story isn't in what's said, but in what's left out. So what exactly happened on the Splendour that night? And why have so many questions gone unanswered? To uncover the truth, we must dissect the investigation, the contradictions, and the voices that refuse to be silenced, starting with the official account of that night. For decades, the official account remained unchanged. Natalie Wood's death was ruled a tragic accident. The reports claimed she had been drinking that night, possibly trying to secure the yacht's dinghy when she lost her balance and fell into the dark, cold waters off Catalina Island. But even in 1981, there were details that didn't sit right. The bruises on her body, the conflicting statements from those on board, and the eerie testimonies from people nearby hinted at something more. A truth that had been buried under the weight of time. At first, it was just speculation, quiet murmurs among those who followed the case closely. But 30 years later, those whispers turned into renewed questions. In 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case, breathing new life into a mystery that had long been dismissed. The catalyst? A startling confession from someone who had been there that night, Dennis Davin, the captain of the Splendour. For years, Davin had publicly supported the accidental drowning theory, but now he was telling a different story. He spoke of tension simmering on the yacht, an argument between Natalie and her husband, Robert Wagner. According to Davin, it wasn't just a disagreement. It was a heated exchange that escalated into something more. He claimed that after Natalie went missing, Wagner had discouraged him from turning on the searchlights or calling for immediate help. It was a damning revelation. If Natalie had simply fallen overboard, why hesitate? Why delay the search in those critical moments? Then came the voices. Marilyn Wayne and her boyfriend, anchored nearby, recalled hearing a woman's desperate cries drifting across the water. The words cut through the night, pleading, panicked. A voice calling for help, again and again, for 15 agonizing minutes. And then, silence. Wayne claimed she reported what she heard to authorities, but her concerns were dismissed. Now, years later, her words lingered like an unanswered question. Did someone hear Natalie Wood's final moments? And if they did, why wasn't anything done? When detectives revisited the evidence, the first thing they scrutinized was the autopsy report. Natalie's body had been found floating face down in a red down jacket and flannel nightgown, miles from the Splendour. The initial conclusion was that she had accidentally fallen overboard, but the bruises on her arms, legs, and face suggested something else. There were more than 24 injuries, abrasions and fresh bruising that didn't entirely align with the theory that she had simply slipped. Back in 1981, these details had been noted but ultimately dismissed, attributed to struggling in the water. But now, forensic experts were raising new questions. Then, in 2012, a significant shift took place. The Los Angeles County coroner amended Natalie's death certificate, changing the official cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. It was an extraordinary decision. No longer was this case just a tragic misstep. It was now a mystery with unexplained elements. As authorities pushed forward, all eyes turned to Robert Wagner. He had been on the yacht that night, and by all accounts, he was the last person to see Natalie alive. But Wagner, now in his 80s, refused to cooperate with the renewed investigation. In 2018, the Sheriff's Department officially named him a person of interest. They weren't calling him a suspect, but they believed he had more information about that night than he had ever admitted. For the first time, law enforcement was publicly questioning the events that had been accepted for decades. They pointed to inconsistencies in Wagner's accounts over the years, his statements shifting slightly each time he spoke about that night. Initially, he claimed he hadn't even noticed Natalie was missing until much later. Then, in later interviews, he admitted they had argued before she disappeared. The investigation focused on several key elements that still didn't make sense. First, the dinghy. Authorities had long assumed Natalie had tried to climb into the small boat and accidentally fallen, but it was found adrift with its engine off. If she had been trying to leave, wouldn't she have started it? And why were her fingerprints not found on the oars or motor? Then, there was the question of time. The official timeline placed her disappearance around midnight, yet Wayne's account of hearing cries for help came between 11 and 11:30 p.m. That discrepancy suggested a crucial gap in the story. And finally, there was the strange silence from the yacht itself. If Wagner and Davin had truly been unaware that Natalie was in danger, why didn't they immediately raise an alarm when they discovered she was gone? Despite all the renewed attention, the case hit the same roadblocks it had in 1981. There was no physical evidence proving foul play. No direct witnesses had seen what happened to Natalie in those final moments. Davin's statements, while compelling, were difficult to verify after so many years. Investigators may have reopened the case, but they were chasing shadows. Fragments of testimony, inconsistencies, and a lingering sense that something vital was missing. Without new evidence, they couldn't move forward. And then, just as suddenly as it had reopened, the case slowed once more. Wagner remained silent. No new witnesses came forward. And like the waters off Catalina Island that fateful night, the mystery surrounding Natalie Wood's death refused to settle. To this day, her case remains open, officially unresolved. The authorities may never be able to prove what truly happened on the Splendour that night. But one thing is certain, this was no ordinary accident. The truth lies somewhere in the gaps, in the moments unaccounted for, in the shifting stories that never quite aligned. And until the full story is known, the question lingers. Was Natalie Wood's death truly an accident, or was it something more? For years, the circumstances surrounding Natalie Wood's death remained a tangled web of conflicting accounts and unsettling details. The 2011 reopening of the case sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond, breathing new urgency into a mystery that had long been dismissed. But as investigators worked through the evidence, searching for a definitive breakthrough, the case took an unexpected turn, one that left more questions than answers. Just when it seemed like progress was being made, the investigation hit an impenetrable wall. Wagner, the last known person to see Natalie alive, refused to cooperate with law enforcement. His silence, coupled with the passage of time, made it nearly impossible to fill in the missing pieces of that night. Without concrete proof of foul play, authorities could not bring charges against anyone. But one final revelation added a chilling layer to an already perplexing case. In 2018, authorities made a rare move, publicly naming Robert Wagner a person of interest. It was an extraordinary shift. The man who had been seen as a grieving husband for decades was now at the center of a death investigation. Investigators believed Wagner knew more than he had ever admitted, particularly about the argument that took place before Natalie disappeared. Captain Dennis Davin's testimony about Wagner's alleged attempts to delay the search only fueled suspicions. Yet even with these allegations, the case remained frustratingly unresolved. There was no physical evidence linking Wagner or anyone else to Natalie's death. No eyewitnesses had come forward to confirm a struggle or foul play. And then, just as momentum seemed to build, the case began to lose traction once again. By 2022, the investigation had largely stalled. Theories swirled. Was it a tragic accident, as Wagner had always claimed? Or was there a truth too dark to ever be fully uncovered? From the beginning, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department faced immense challenges in piecing together what really happened that night. The initial 1981 investigation was brief, relying heavily on Wagner's account, and many potential witnesses were never thoroughly questioned. When the case was reopened in 2011, forensic experts re-examined the autopsy report, concluding that Natalie's injuries raised serious doubts about the original accidental drowning theory. Despite this, no definitive evidence emerged to prove homicide. The bruising could suggest a struggle, but it could also be consistent with accidental drowning. The cries for help reported by Marilyn Wayne were haunting, but there was no way to confirm if they had come from Natalie. The inconsistencies in Wagner's statements were troubling, but legally they weren't enough to warrant charges. As the years passed, key figures grew older, memories faded, and crucial opportunities to gather new evidence slipped away. Robert Wagner, now in his 90s, has never been charged and maintains his innocence. Marilyn Wayne, the witness who heard the cries for help, has long believed there was more to the story, but her account was never enough to reopen a criminal case. The case file remains open, but the likelihood of a resolution continues to diminish. Even now, one question lingers. Was Natalie Wood's death truly an accident, or did someone ensure that the truth would never surface? Natalie Wood's death remains one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries, a case that has spanned over 4 decades, leaving behind a trail of questions, suspicions, and painful uncertainty. At its core, this story is not just about a famous actress lost too soon, but about the fragile nature of truth itself. How much do we really know about what happened that night? And how much remains hidden in the silence of those who were there? When we examine cases like this, ones that exist in the space between accident and crime, we must consider both legal and psychological factors that can cloud justice. Human memory is imperfect, shaped by time, trauma, and self-preservation. Over decades, even those who were present may come to believe altered versions of events, whether consciously or unconsciously. Legally, this case underscores the challenge of proving intent without direct evidence. If Natalie's death was more than an accident, was it the result of a deliberate act or a tragic moment of negligence? And if the latter, does it meet the threshold for criminal liability? The psychology of silence is another crucial factor. People with knowledge of a crime, or even suspicions, often remain quiet due to fear, loyalty, or self-interest. In the absence of a confession or irrefutable evidence, justice can stall indefinitely. Ultimately, cases like Natalie Wood's remind us that the truth is not always a neatly packaged resolution. Sometimes it lingers, just out of reach, concealed in the gaps of memory, the limits of evidence, and the silence of those who hold the final pieces. Despite multiple investigations, conflicting witness testimonies, and the chilling possibility that more people know the truth than have spoken, one thing remains clear. Justice, whether deserved or already served, will never feel complete. Whether Natalie Wood's death was a tragic accident or something more sinister, the ambiguity surrounding it forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. Sometimes, even with all the clues laid out before us, the truth remains just out of reach. Thank you for watching and being part of our community here at Derrick Investigates. Your support allows us to continue exploring the most perplexing cases, giving voice to the unanswered questions that still linger. The case of Natalie Wood serves as a chilling reminder of how fragile the truth can be, especially when conflicting accounts and unanswered questions linger for decades. Despite new investigations and evolving testimonies, the truth remains elusive, just beyond our grasp. What do you think? Was Natalie's death purely an accident, as originally ruled? Or does the evidence suggest something more, something authorities were never able to fully explain? What do you believe really happened that night? Comment below. At Derrick Investigates, our mission is to shine a light on the unexplained, to honor those lost, and to seek the answers that may still be out there. If this case intrigued you, like, comment, and subscribe to stay on the trail of more unsolved mysteries. Together, we can keep these voices alive and shine a light on the forgotten. Until next time, keep your mind open, your questions sharp, and your curiosity alive. I'm Derrick, and I'll be back soon with another investigation.